I've never been the kind of guy to jump to conclusions or suspect my wife, Lisa, of anything. We'd been married for almost 10 years, and honestly, I thought we had a decent, if not perfect, marriage. She's always been a bit of a bitch, snappy, dismissive, quick to lie about small things, but I figured that was just her personality. Besides, I loved her, and I was willing to overlook her flaws because she could also be charming when she wanted to be. Lately, though, I'd noticed some strange shifts. She'd be more irritable, snapping at me over small issues, and she started spending a lot more time on her phone. She'd disappear into the bedroom or the bathroom for long stretches, often with her phone pressed to her ear or hiding her screen when I walked in. She'd also get defensive if I asked who she was talking to, brushing it off with a dismissive laugh or an eye roll. I didn't think much of it at first, probably just work stress, I told myself. But then came the subtle changes in her behavior with the kids. She'd be more impatient, quick to criticize them, and her tone was harsher than usual. She'd also come home later than she used to, always claiming she was working late or meeting with clients. I even caught her in a couple of little lies about her whereabouts. Nothing too obvious, but enough to make me suspicious. I felt a gnawing unease in my stomach, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Still, I kept a close eye on her, subconsciously waiting for something to confirm my suspicions. The real turning point, though, was when I stumbled upon her phone one evening while she was out. I was in the living room, just browsing through some old emails and photos, killing time, when I saw her text messages pop up on the screen. My heart skipped a beat. There were messages that didn't make any sense, flirty, suggestive texts from someone named Jake, with exchanges about meeting up, sex, and sneaky little good mornings that felt way too intimate for a client or a friend. I froze reading her words, feeling my stomach churn. I knew then that my wife wasn't just hiding her phone or talking to a coworker. She was cheating on me. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. All those years, all those little suspicions, turns out she was lying about everything. The worst part, I caught her red-handed and I didn't even realize it until I saw her messages. I was stunned, anger boiling inside me. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly numb. I wondered how I missed the signs, how I didn't see it coming, and what I was supposed to do now. I kept the phone in my hand, staring at the screen, my mind racing. I knew I had to confront her. I had to hear her explain herself, even though I already knew the truth. Still, I was also trying to process everything, how someone I loved and trusted could do this to me, to us. I didn't want to jump into action right away, but I knew this was the moment that would change everything. I decided to wait until she got home. I didn't want to accuse her blindly. Well, maybe a little. I wanted her to own up to it. When she finally arrived, her usual bitchy attitude was in full force, but I couldn't ignore what I'd seen. I looked her straight in the eyes and asked, "Lisa, what the hell is Jake? Who is he?" Her face instantly hardened and she blinked rapidly, trying to hide her reaction. She laughed, a forced, sarcastic laugh, and said, "Oh, just some guy from work. You're imagining things." I didn't buy it, not for a second. I knew better. I felt a cold wave of fury and hurt crash over me, realizing that the woman I had shared my life with could be so dishonest, so manipulative. I knew this was just the beginning of a long, painful road ahead. I had to decide what I was going to do next, but one thing was clear. I was no longer going to be the naive husband who turned a blind eye. Whatever came after this, I would face it head on. After that confrontation, I was a mess. My mind was racing, trying to process everything I'd just learned. I didn't want to believe that Lisa was really cheating, but the evidence was right there in her phone, clear as day. Still, part of me refused to accept it outright. Maybe I was hoping she'd deny it. Or maybe I was just trying to hold on to some shred of hope that she'd come clean, but deep down I knew the truth. She had been lying to me, hiding something, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. The next couple of days were a nightmare. I kept replaying the moment I found her messages, trying to figure out what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. I kept thinking about the little signs, the late nights, the irritated mood swings, the secretive phone habits, and I felt like a fool for not noticing earlier. It was almost like I'd been blind. How could I have missed all this? Was I just too stupid or too comfortable? I wondered if I ever really knew her at all. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior got worse. She was cold and hostile, snapping at me over the smallest things. She threw around insults, called me insecure and paranoid, and tried to brush everything off as nonsense. Whenever I brought up Jake or asked her questions, she'd lie or dismiss me with a snarky remark. I hated seeing that side of her, so bitchy, so dismissive, and I hated myself even more for feeling so helpless. I wanted to shake her, make her admit the truth, but she just kept spinning her lies. One day, I decided I couldn't just sit around waiting for her to slip up again. I needed to get my ducks in a row, figure out what I was going to do. So I started discreetly gathering evidence, screenshots of her texts, notes on her behavior, anything that could prove she was unfaithful. I didn't want to just accuse her without proof. I knew how lying she was, and I didn't trust her to come clean on her own. I was preparing for the worst, knowing that once I confronted her with everything, there would be no turning back. But I also wanted revenge. Not just the petty kind where you hurt someone emotionally. You know, the she gets a taste of her own medicine thing. I wanted to really make her feel the pain she had caused me. Maybe that sounds petty or vindictive, but honestly, I was hurt and furious. I wanted her to know what it felt like to be betrayed so deeply. I started planning how I'd do it, how I'd expose her to everyone, especially the friends who thought she was perfect. She had a reputation as a bitchy, manipulative woman, but I was going to make sure everyone knew she was also a cheater. I remembered the moment I saw her at that restaurant with Jake. They looked so comfortable, like they belonged to each other. It was so obvious that they hadn't just met for coffee, they were having sex, and they didn't care who saw. That image burned in my mind. I felt a deep, searing anger that I never knew I was capable of. I wanted her to pay for this, to suffer for betraying me, for making a fool of me in front of everyone who thought we had some kind of perfect life. At the same time, I was torn. Part of me still loved her, still wanted us to somehow fix this mess. But another part, much louder, wanted her to see what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away. And I was ready to do whatever it took to make her regret it. I wasn't naive enough to think I could fix this easily, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without a fight. I started thinking about how I'd confront her again, maybe with the evidence laid out, maybe with some kind of plan to catch her red-handed. I was doing my best to stay calm, but inside I was raging. I kept asking myself how someone could be so callous, so bitchy, so damn manipulative and still lie straight to my face. The worst part, I knew she'd deny everything, call me crazy or insecure, and try to turn the tables on me. But I was done being her fool. One thing I knew for sure, I had to be smart. I couldn't just blow up and lose my mind, that wouldn't help. I had to stay calm, collect, and plan my next move carefully. I was angry, yes, but I also knew that revenge would be sweeter if I played it smart. I had to figure out how to expose her, how to make her feel the pain she deserved. That's what I wanted more than anything now, her to feel the sting of betrayal just as I did. I was ready to see her sweat, to see her squirm, and I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of woman she really was. Over the next few days, I felt like I was walking on a tightrope. Every time I saw Lisa, I could tell she was aware I was suspicious. She got even bitchier, snapping at the kids, throwing sarcastic comments my way, acting like I was the one losing it. Honestly, it made me want to punch her in the face. But I kept my cool. Inside, I was plotting, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I also started reaching out to some of the friends we had, people who knew her better than I did, or so I thought. I needed allies, someone who could tell me what she was really like behind the scenes. I was careful about what I said. They didn't suspect anything, but I'd drop hints, try to gauge their reactions. Most of them liked her well enough, but I could tell some of them suspected she was a bitchy manipulator. Not many, but enough to give me hope that I wasn't the only one seeing her true colors. Meanwhile, I kept digging into her phone. It was a tedious process, screenshots, notes, saved messages. I didn't want her to catch on. I was paranoid about her finding out I was spying, so I kept everything on a secure drive. I was planning to expose her at just the right moment, maybe even make her confess herself, but I knew I had to be careful. Lisa was good at lying, and I didn't want to give her any room to spin her way out of it. One night, I finally hit pay dirt. I found a hidden folder she'd forgotten about, filled with explicit photos and more messages from Jake, more than enough to blow the lid off the whole affair. My stomach sank again. It was worse than I thought. They had been doing this for months, sneaking around, pretending to be just coworkers or friends, and she still denied it, the bitch. I felt a mixture of rage and disgust, but also a strange sense of clarity. That same night, I decided I'd had enough. I was going to confront her, but not yet. I wanted to prepare myself mentally. I wanted her to realize I wasn't just some naive husband anymore. I was someone who'd uncovered her lies and who was ready to fight back. I was planning to lay everything out on the table, to confront her with all the evidence I'd collected. I knew she'd try to deny, to spin her. Usual bullshit, but I was prepared for that. The plan was simple. I'd catch her in the act, or at least make her admit everything. I'd need witnesses, maybe even set a trap. I was tired of being the fool, tired of feeling like I was just some doormat. She thought she could cheat on me, lie to my face, and get away with it. Well, I was about to flip the switch. The emotional toll was heavy. Every time I saw her sneer at me or dismiss my concerns, I felt more anger than I'd ever felt before. But underneath it all, there was also a deep sadness. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved. At least I thought I loved her. Now I wasn't sure what was real anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay. The foundation of our marriage was crumbling, and I was the one holding the pieces together, even if it was just so I could figure out how to destroy it properly. One night, I finally decided I'd had enough. I sat her down face to face and told her I knew everything. I laid out all the evidence, the secret folder, the texts, the emails. Her face turned pale, but she quickly recovered, flashing that bitchy smirk she always used when she was trying to manipulate someone. She looked at me like I was a joke. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're delusional. Jake is just a friend and you're overreacting." I couldn't believe her. She always lied so effortlessly, like she'd rehearsed it 100 times. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "I know about Jake. I know about the sex, the lies, everything. And I'm done pretending. I want a divorce. You've betrayed me too many times. I deserve better than this." Her reaction was priceless. She looked stunned for a moment, then started yelling, calling me insecure, jealous, crazy. She tried to guilt me, cry, even curse me out. But I stayed firm. I told her I'd record everything she said because I knew she'd try to deny it again. That night she stormed out of the house, slamming doors, throwing a tantrum like a spoiled brat. I watched her leave, feeling this strange mix of relief and heartbreak. Part of me was glad I finally had proof and could move on, but another part was devastated that the woman I married could be so dishonest, so cruel. The betrayal cut deep, and I knew it would take time to heal. But for now, I'd taken the first step toward reclaiming my life, no matter how bitter it was to see her walk away. I've got a long road ahead, but I'm no longer the naive fool I used to be. I'm angry, I'm hurt, but I'm also determined. And honestly, I don't regret exposing her. She deserves to be called out. I just hope anyone else out there who's dealing with a lying, cheating bitch like her finds the strength to see through the bullshit and do what's right for themselves. Because if I've learned anything, it's that nobody's going to save you but yourself. After she left, I sat alone in the quiet of the house, feeling every emotion clash inside me. The anger was still there, simmering just beneath the surface, but so was the sadness, knowing I had been so blind, so naive. It hit me hard that the woman I trusted, the woman I'd built my life with, was capable of doing something so cruel. Still, I knew I couldn't dwell on it forever. I had to make a decision about what to do next. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The betrayal ran too deep. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy weight on my chest. I decided to contact a divorce lawyer. No point in dragging this out anymore. I wanted out, clean and simple. I didn't want to be with someone who could lie and cheat so brazenly. But at the same time, part of me was thinking about revenge, about exposing her to everyone she cared about, making her own her lies in front of our friends and family. I wasn't going to let her get away with this without consequences. I started drafting a plan. First, I'd gather all the evidence I had, screenshots, recordings, her secret folder, and organize everything carefully. Then I'd call her bluff. I knew she'd try to deny everything, but I'd have proof. I also knew she'd try to spin her lies and manipulate people, so I had to be ready for that. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be her fool anymore, that I'd fight back hard. One thing I did was reach out to a few close friends, just to gauge the situation. I told them I suspected Lisa had been unfaithful and that I was considering a divorce. Most of them looked surprised, but some couldn't hide their own suspicions about her bitchy attitude and suspicious behavior. It was a small step, but it made me feel like I wasn't completely alone in all this. I wanted people to know the truth, even if I wasn't ready to expose everything publicly yet. Meanwhile, Lisa kept trying to contact me, calling, texting, sending me her usual bullshit, trying to guilt me, saying she loved me, claiming it was all a big misunderstanding. I ignored most of it. I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. The only thing I wanted was to get her out of my life and move forward. I couldn't keep living with someone who lied so effortlessly, who treated me like a joke. But I also felt this burning desire to make her pay for what she did. I wasn't just going to walk away and pretend it never happened. No, I wanted her to see what her betrayal had cost me. I started thinking about how to do that, how to make sure everyone knew she was a hypocrite, a manipulative cheat. I knew it was petty, but I also knew she deserved it. She'd always put on this perfect, bitchy facade, acting like she was better than everyone else. Well, now everyone would see her for what she really was, a liar and a cheater. That night, I sat down at my computer and looked through everything I had collected. I knew I had enough to destroy her reputation if I wanted to. I'd expose her to all our friends, tell the truth about her affair, and make her own her lies in front of everyone. I imagined her face, her pride shattered, her reputation ruined. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. She'd been dishonest, manipulative, and frankly, a terrible person for a long time. After everything, I felt a strange sense of relief, like I was finally taking control of my life again. I knew she'd try to spin it, try to gaslight me or convince everyone I was crazy, but I was prepared. I had all the evidence, all her lies laid out. I was going to send the screenshots and recordings to some mutual friends just to set the record straight. I wanted them to see her true colors, not the bitchy, manipulative wife they thought they knew, but the deceitful, unfaithful woman she'd become. The thought of confrontation still made my stomach churn, but I was done hiding. I was done pretending everything was okay. I'd rather face the truth head-on and be honest about how hurt I was. That was the only way I was going to move forward, whether to fix my life or to cut her out completely. I needed clarity, and I needed to make sure she paid for her lies. At the same time, I was scared. Scared of how everyone would react, how our friends and family would see her now. Would they turn against her? Would they judge her as harshly as I did? Honestly, I didn't care about her reputation anymore. All I cared about was protecting myself and making sure she knew she couldn't get away with it. I wanted her to feel vulnerable, exposed, the way I'd been feeling for weeks. So I scheduled a few calls with the lawyer and started thinking about how to approach the divorce. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I also knew I'd finally taken control. I'd been a fool, yes, but now I was reborn as someone who wouldn't tolerate betrayal and lies. I'd learned from this mess, about myself, about her, about what real trust looks like. And whether I'd end up divorced or trying to salvage what was left, I was determined to come out of this stronger. Because at the end of it all, I realized I deserved better. I deserved someone honest, someone who didn't lie and cheat. And I was done settling for less. After making the decision to move forward with the divorce, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Relief because the chaos of hiding her secrets was finally over. Dread because I knew what was coming next: confrontation, exposure, and the inevitable fallout. I started to prepare myself mentally for what I knew would be a war. Lisa's pride had been shattered, and I knew she wouldn't go down quietly. She'd fight, lie, and try to manipulate her way out of everything, just like she always did. But this time, I was ready. I reached out to the divorce lawyer I'd found. We scheduled a consultation. And I laid everything out: her affair, the evidence I had, her manipulative personality. The lawyer was straightforward, telling me I had a solid case and that I should be prepared for her to fight dirty. I already knew that. Lisa was the kind of woman who'd do anything to save her reputation, even if it meant lying her way through a courtroom or spreading false stories. But I was prepared for that too. I had everything documented, and I wasn't afraid to fight for what was fair. My plan was to confront her one last time, this time with everything laid out on the table. I wanted her to face the truth of her betrayal, not just from me, but from everyone she cared about. I contacted a couple of mutual friends I knew weren't as naive as the others. I told them I had evidence of her affair and that I was filing for divorce. I didn't give them the full story yet, just enough to make them suspicious. I figured if they saw what I had, they'd realize she'd been lying all along. In the meantime, I kept gathering more evidence, screenshots, recordings, even some of her secret messages with Jake. I was meticulous about it, making sure everything was airtight. I didn't want her to have a single chance to spin her way out of this. I wanted her to see that I was serious, that I had the upper hand now. Every day I felt stronger, more determined. I'd been humiliated, betrayed, and hurt, sure, but I refused to let her walk all over me anymore. The night I decided to confront her, I knew I had to do it carefully. I didn't want her to bolt or hide again. I scheduled a meeting at our house, telling her I wanted to talk about our future. When she arrived, she was her usual bitchy self, snarky, dismissive, arrogant. I kept my calm, but inside I was boiling. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Lisa, I know about Jake. I know everything, and I'm not going to let you lie your way out of this anymore." Her face instantly changed. For the briefest moment, I saw a flicker of panic, but she quickly masked it with her usual smirk. She started her usual lies, claiming she didn't know what I was talking about, that I was paranoid, that I was projecting. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots. Her face paled. She tried to deny, claim I'd manipulated her, that it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't let her get away with it. I told her I had recordings of her talking about their sex, their plans, her lies. I told her I was done playing games. I told her I was filing for divorce. Her reaction was a mix of rage and tears, mostly rage. She yelled, called me insecure, accused me of being jealous, crazy. She tried to turn the tables, crying she loved me, that she'd change. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd made up my mind. I told her that her lies and betrayal had destroyed everything we had, and I wasn't going to go back. I wanted her out of my life. She stormed out, screaming at me, calling me all sorts of names, crazy, possessive, insecure. I just sat there, watching her leave, feeling both victorious and heartbroken. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel something close to relief. I'd finally faced the truth. I had all the proof I needed. She was a liar, a cheat, and a manipulator, and I was going to make sure everyone knew it. Now I'm waiting for the legal process to unfold, for the papers to be filed, and for everything to be out in the open. I know she'll try to spin her lies again, but I've done everything I can to prepare. Honestly, I don't care if she tries to manipulate everyone. What matters is that I'm finally free from the woman who used me, betrayed me, and played me for a fool. This whole experience has been a brutal lesson. It's taught me that you can't trust someone just because they act like they're perfect. People like Lisa, bitchy, manipulative, and unfaithful, will always put themselves first. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived her lies, her betrayal, her manipulations. And now I'm ready to move on, better and wiser. I just hope others catch on before their own lives get destroyed by someone they thought loved them. Because trust me, once you see the truth, there's no going back. The legal process has been a nightmare, but at least it's moving forward now. The divorce papers are filed and I've handed over all the evidence, screenshots, recordings, everything I collected over those painful weeks. I can't say I'm fully healed, but I feel like a huge weight has been lifted. Still, every time I think about Lisa, her bitchy smirk, her lies, her betrayal, I get furious all over again. It's like I've been through a war and part of me is still trying to come to terms with what she did. In the aftermath, I've begun rebuilding my life piece by piece. I've started spending more time with friends, reconnecting with old hobbies, and focusing on my work. I've realized I was too busy trying to keep her happy, trying to ignore the red flags, and ignoring what I truly needed from a relationship: honesty, respect, trust. Now I see clearly. I see what kind of person Lisa really was, and I see what I deserve. Looking back, I've learned a lot from this ordeal. Mostly that people aren't always what they seem. That some women, like Lisa, are manipulative, entitled, and willing to destroy what's good just to get their way. I also learned that I'm capable of much more than I thought, standing up for myself, confronting the lies, and walking away from someone who does value me. It hurts to admit that this was the woman I thought I knew, but it's better to face that truth than live in denial. I won't lie, there are still moments when I feel a sting of sadness, a flicker of regret, but I remind myself that I did what was necessary. I protected myself and finally got closure. I hope that anyone reading this who might be going through something similar realizes they're not alone. Betrayal hurts, but it also teaches you who you really are. You don't have to stay in a toxic situation. You don't have to accept lies and manipulation. Sometimes you just have to gather all the evidence, stand tall, and walk away. As for Lisa, I don't know what her life looks like now. I don't care anymore. Let her lie, manipulate, and pretend she's innocent. I've done enough damage control for a lifetime. My focus is on moving forward, healing, and finding someone who truly deserves my trust and love. Someone who won't lie or cheat or treat me like I'm nothing. This whole experience has been brutal, but it's also been a wake-up call. I've learned that honesty is everything. Without it, everything crumbles. Trust is fragile, and once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. But I also learned that I am resilient. I can survive betrayal. I can rebuild a life from the ashes of someone's lies. So now I'm just taking it day by day. No more pretending. No more lies. Just real honesty, real respect, and a future I can finally call my own. I don't regret uncovering her secrets, even if it hurt like hell. Because if I hadn't, I'd still be blinded, still living a lie, still pretending everything was okay. Instead, I've faced the truth, and honestly, I feel a little stronger for it. It's not the ending I imagined, but it's the beginning of something better, something real.